So moving on to our next panel, which is going to be all about fintech and BFSI e-commerce. So how are modern financial and insurance companies reinventing themselves to stay relevant and maximize growth in the MENA region? Well, let's find out and understand. Please welcome to the stage Javed Akbarali, the co-founder and MD of Wellix, Rahul Matiwarkar, the Chief Product Officer of InsuranceMarket.ae, Brad Whitfield, the co-founder and chairman of Kashi, Lito German, the CEO of Bayer Direct Payments, and not one but two moderators in the session for you here. Ian Hooper, the partner payments leader of Global Banking Expert, PwC, and Louis Jardim, the senior manager for payments at PwC Middle East. Guys, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. For me, this has been a massively insightful morning already. Often I get to see up to the point of a transaction in e-commerce, not the other side, how merchants think about their market and so forth. And a lot of my work is around thinking about how to optimize payments for customers, for merchants, and so forth. When we sat down as a panel to discuss this topic, I thought we were going to have lots of, frankly, quite mundane conversations around features and functions and gateways and so on. And actually, I'm really pleasantly surprised how aligned I think the thoughts that we had are to the conversations and topics that have come up this morning. I think we'll find this a fascinating, very insightful discussion, loaded with experience and insights from a very creative set of people. And I hope you enjoy it. Liz?
Yeah. So to just start us off, Rahul, as one of the largest insurance brokers, e-commerce as well, can you just give us a view of how e-commerce transactions have grown for you and what you had to do to kind of keep up with that?
Sure. Thank you, Louis. Hi, everyone. Well, as one of the largest insurance platforms, what we had to adopt to is the various payment methods that are available out there. Like with COVID, what we realized is that a lot of people are happy to adopt online payments, happy to go ahead and make more transactions online. And with developing the entire e-commerce platform, it did help us succeed in that area. So today I would be happy to say that from the traditional methods of using cash, checks has reduced significantly, and a lot of companies are also happy to go ahead and make transactions online using company cards. People are happy to go ahead and make payments online. So we recently did go ahead and adapt to that, and we've also gone ahead and adopted methods like Apple Pay or Google Pay that's going to be out there soon, because it's all about catering to the customer's experience and keeping it a very seamless experience, like a true e-commerce journey. So that's typically what we had to do, and it's been successful so far. It's been great. Thanks.
Awesome to hear. And in terms of growth in our region, we're characterized by quite a large, young, quite tech-savvy population, right? So Brad, what has Kashi done? What is Kashi? What has Kashi done to kind of meet those needs, and where do you think it'll go next?
Thanks for that, and hello everyone. So Kashi, we have developed essentially a digital bank for the young people. We launched a digital bank for the youth in Saudi, and we are hopefully going to launch in the UAE very soon, and not only our own Kashi bank, but also helping a lot of traditional banks launch their youth proposition. So I think the first point is super key, is we live in a part of the world that has a very, very young population, and a young population which spending power, and I would make it even a little bit wider and say spending influence, is increasing day by day. So it's a massive, massive segment. For us, it was about focus. That was the one key thing we wanted to do, is we wanted to focus on the youth segment and build something specifically for them. So that transitions through the product. So from a banking perspective, we had to look at the financial literacy levels of the young people and build a product for that. We had to look at how we engage our customer, you know, in a gamified way, because that's how they like to enjoy their experiences, and build ultimately a product that is tailored 100% for them. And that was a product side, but also on, you know, the way you speak to the market. You know, my kids don't want to see me dance on TikTok because it's lame, right? It doesn't look cool, and, you know, kids don't want to see their banks dance on TikTok either. So you have to sort of transition the whole brand and how you speak to the segment in a very authentic way, targeted directly for them in a way that they sort of understand and can relate to.
Yeah, and we'll get that. We're not going TikTok. So, like, in addition to that emerging segment, and we had a chat about this the other day, Javid, the value that the customers are looking for in the marketplace is shifting as well. So, how, and again, what is WellX, and how have you guys shifted to kind of meet that? And what are these new values that they're seeking?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's an entire shift. There's a generational shift that's happening from underneath us, and it's happening at such a rapid pace that I think the industry, and I speak on behalf of the industry that Rahul and I come from, is struggling to keep up with. Kudos to the team at Insurance Market for paving the way for technology startups like us to come in and actually bring that shared value system to the industry. So from an insurance standpoint, the way we look at it, and I think, Ian, you mentioned this, we're not reinventing e-com, we're literally inventing an entire new brand of commerce, right? And so at WellX, what we do is we facilitate and assist and support consumers of insurance products, health and life insurance products, to take better care of themselves, and in being able to do so, are able to reduce their premiums. Because the one harsh reality of life is, if you live in this part of the world, is you need a health insurance. Whether you're paying for it or your employer is paying for it, someone somewhere is paying for your health insurance, so that when you do fall sick, you're looked after. And what brands like ours do, or what we do, because the only ones in the country, but what we do is essentially come in and support insurance companies better manage their risk by keeping their member base healthier. And so we've developed a product together with various different insurance or products with insurance companies that looks at supporting people on their everyday journey of life instead of waiting for them to fall sick and paying for their hospital bills. It's this age-old concept of an apple a day keeps the doctor away. We are the apple. We're not Apple yet, but the apple.
Working on it, but breaking that cycle and getting into a different value upfront to those customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the one product, right, that you buy hoping you never have to use is health insurance. But with the health insurance plans that you're able to buy through our propositions, you want to use it every day because we give you an ecosystem of prevention-focused measures. So everything from buying a wearable that sits on your wrist, I'm nicely decked out with my Whoop and my Aura, but an Apple Watch or an Ultra-Human Ring or a patch, and then ultimately we take the metrics and the data from there to be able to facilitate health journeys and pathways to be able to give you a better tomorrow and a healthier tomorrow. And in doing so, you collect points. And we gamify it, like Brad said. That's what the generation of today is looking for. We gamify it, we create a social angle to it, and then we allow people to turn their health into currency. And that's the new wave of e-com that we look at that's going to engulf the region and the world.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a nice little link to, you know, there's the physical health, and I look at the financial health in exactly the same way. You know, it's too late if your bank account's empty and the rainy day comes, right? So it's embedding that kind of educational system in a way that's engaging, that doesn't feel like you're sitting in front of a university lecture. It's a nudge kind of way of educating people, but getting people thinking about it and impacting their behavior early on is key, and it's a lot of synergies there.
No, absolutely. So prevention, from that perspective, we look at holistic well-being. Financial well-being is one of the key elements of being able to look after yourself. And so if people make deposits, we will incentivize them because they're looking after tomorrow. If people take 10,000 steps a day, we will give them points because they're looking after their physical health. If they book a mental health session with a counselor, we incentivize them because they're looking after their mental well-being. And so we look at holistic well-being because everything, when you put everything together, it aggregates into your current state of mind. And then it is that state of mind that determines whether or not your body's going to give way or your mind's going to give way, and then you're going to start costing the insurance company additional premiums and claims tomorrow, right? It all comes down to claims. We live in a world where premiums are chasing claims every year. Medical inflation, costs are going up. The only way to buck that trend is to have consumers relook at health, their own health, as true currency.
Yeah. So build a currency, start to buy your health and your financial literacy before you get to any type of transaction. With all of this is the kind of undisputed kind of rise of digitization and payment methods and new segments, etc. But we still have in this region quite a large segment of the population that doesn't have access to that. So Litu, how has BuyerDirect kind of shaped its payments and commerce to meet those needs?
Thanks, Luis, and hello to everyone. Actually, when I was first invited, I wondered whether I even belonged on the panel because everyone's talking about progress and all the new tools and technologies that are available. But it's a harsh reality that in any adoption lifecycle, there is always a laggards. And Brad spoke about focus, and we decided to focus on this segment specifically, which are the laggards, the ones who are left behind, the ones who are unbanked, the ones who don't have access to online banking, to credit cards, to smartphones even. And there's quite a large population here in the UAE for that, particularly the blue-collar workers, the even certain undocumented immigrant people here. There are some people who are left behind and are unable to take advantage of all these technologies. What BuyerDirect does is that actually comes in now and focuses on them, gives them an opportunity to be able to pay for their bills back home. It's that simple. Because right now, the only thing available to them is to walk over to a remittance center, hand over, and our surveys show that a lot of these workers hand over as much as 95% of their salaries because a lot of their basic needs are already met by the employer, meaning food, shelter, etc. So they actually walk over to a remittance center and hand over 95% of their salary in cash, hoping that when it gets to the other side, that the bills are paid. But there is also the sad fact that, you know, the woman is working here, she's raising somebody else's kids, and when she goes over and sends over her money, the husband back home then winds up womanizing, gambling, drinking, spending on everything else but the tuition fees of the kids. And so after 10 years of slaving away here, she comes home and she realizes there are no savings, and then all she can do is then just hop on a plane back and hopefully grab another job here. And we're trying to break that cycle by telling them you can have more control, but this is the analog side of it. We're on the back end of it. While everyone is going apps and mobile technology and all that, we're over the counter. So these people have to walk over their counters and they have to hand over the cash, and we pay for their electricity bills and we pay for their mobile phone bills or whatever it is, tuition fees and all that back home. But at least it gives them that control over their money. Now I understand we're focusing on a segment that is shrinking, but it's still there and it's still quite sizable. So we're the sweepers in the conversation. We're the ones who take care of the ones who would otherwise be left behind. And we just try to nudge them along and push them along and make sure that no one is left behind.
Yeah, very interesting, quite novel. All right. So Rahul, you're still a step, further removed from this because you're less face-to-face, you're less taking the cash from the customers and hearing the personal stories. But how do you keep up with understanding those needs and some, it's insurance at the end of the day. How do you learn about the tricks that your customers are playing on you sometimes?
Well, one of the biggest things is the way they pay. And when it comes to a conversation of, all right, how can I buy this? Using data, what we do is we also keep a track of how these transactions are coming in day to day. So if someone wants to split their payments, somebody looks into going ahead and getting payment plan options, we do keep a track of those things because at the end of the day, if you want to be a successful e-commerce platform, these payments have to be swift, seamless, should not look like a task that they have to overcome. So when we look at data, we do analyze certain trends, like certain clients will also look at, maybe splitting a large premium across 2 cards. So we kind of adapted to that, and we do have solutions for it today. That kind of helps make it easy for them to then, micromanage their own finances. And insurance is something that not everybody looks at as a primary need, per se. Like car insurance, why does everyone have car insurance today? It's because it's mandated by law. So it's not something where people understand how it can otherwise help you in many situations. So the way we look at it is analyze data, see what the clients are trying to do, what they're trying to say. We do take feedback as well seriously. So we do get payment plans of like 0 installments over 3 months, 4 months, and yeah, that's what kind of helps us, stay afloat in the game. That's it.
Yeah, and Javed, you sit a step before all of this, and you're using AI and as many data entry points as you can to build that for you. So how are you doing that, and what do you think other companies should be looking for in the next 3-5 years to kind of keep up with that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Rahul said it very well when he said nobody really wants to buy insurance. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm going to pay my premium today, yay. It is not the most fun purchase. It's a grudge purchase. People buy it because they're forced to. So all the power to you guys for making that happen. But I think beyond that, it's how do you then start extracting value for something you've already paid for, right? And that's where we then bring in the data angle to be able to hyper-personalize insurance. There's a very big disconnect in the incentives within the industry, right? So consumers don't want to pay a premium and or they don't want to go to the hospital, sorry. Consumers don't want to go to the hospital. And you've got the providers, or rather the insurers, who are praying that they don't end up at the hospital. But what happens in between is where sort of that value gets destroyed. And that's where we come in bringing data to hyper-personalize insurance experiences every day. So you wake up in the morning, and we had this conversation before coming on the panel, you look at your Whoop score and you're like, 94% recovery, I feel great today. And then you go out and have a great day, not realizing that it was at the back of sort of subliminal messaging that you got at the start of the day. And that's tech, and that's what tech does to facilitate a human interaction. You're right. At the end of the day, Leto, you said it, we're people, right? And people will always want to do better for themselves, and they'll always want to grow. And so by using data to provide these hyper-personalized experiences. So if I've got a 94% recovery score, I'm going to then go and tell this consumer, you might want to take a run today because you feel so great. If you have a 3% recovery score, telling this guy or this individual that go for a run is like counterproductive because they're not doing very, very well. They didn't sleep very, very well last night. Their HRV was down, or there's a certain data point that tells you that today is not the right day for a run. But you know what? Maybe book a session with a counselor. Try and find out why you weren't doing so well. And that's how you're able to bring data to hyper-personalized experiences. Let me ask you, is Netflix a marketplace? Maybe, right? Exactly, right? You can no longer label these spaces, but what Netflix has done so very well, YouTube as well, is hyper-personalized experiences. We spoke about the Google effect, how Google knows everything we're doing and then starts to personalize your own universe around around the data they've collected from you. That's what we're trying to achieve in the health space. We try to understand your vulnerabilities as a customer and then help you overcome those by different activations and interventions. And in doing so, hoping you will not get sick as much, you won't go to the hospital as much, and you'll live a happier, healthier, more fulfilled life. And then cost insurance companies a lot less money.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it changes perception a little bit, right? Because, I don't know, my perception of an insurance company was someone who may or may not pay if something goes wrong. My perception of a bank or learning about money management, incredibly boring, even for a finance guy. So, I think the technology has the impact to change the perception in the way they engage and bring these important topics and things to sort of into the person's life in a much sort of more interesting and more relatable way than perhaps it was in the past.
I think intimate is the word you want to use, because the phone is the one thing that we take everywhere we go.
Without doubt. Everywhere. So you know more about the customers than anyone else. And so Brad, you touched upon that. So in terms of the young population, the new methods of paying coming up, the way you understand them. So what do you think they'll want next in terms of e-commerce and the way to pay and the way to interact with that, Phil?
Great question, yeah. So I think we had to peel things back a little bit, actually, and first of all, get the basics right. You know, you had a whole bunch of young people in this part of the world that weren't even allowed to open up a bank account. Like, I just did not understand that personally. I'm from New Zealand. My accent's a New Zealand accent. I had my first debit card when I was 10. I had my first bank account when I was 6. So that was the foundations that we had to fix very quickly, and enabling the young people to, or empower the young people to actually engage in commerce, and a lot of commerce. So that was the key. I think for us, in terms of how we see the sort of the area evolving, for us that we've noticed is banking for the young people is a very social, not banking, but spending money is a very social element, you know. It's not just about shopping online and getting what you want, but it's, you know, spending money is about spending time with your friends and family and things like that.
Yeah, and to your point the other day, is influencing your family and what they're going to buy. Even though you might not spend the money yourself, you're influencing someone else. 100%.
So you got the youth that have a lot of money, and that's growing every day, but I think all the parents will know in the room that
it's not their own money then.
It's the kids that decide where you eat, where you spend your time, where you holiday, where you shop. So the influence is massive when it comes to the young people as well. But that social element was something that we were able to touch on quite quickly. And in terms of the product, you know, things like P2P payments, splitting the bills. We have cool platforms where the kids are actually educating other kids. You know, some kids saying, I suck at saving, and kids are piping up and saying, you know what, this is what I do. Every time I do a big purchase, I make sure 10% goes in, or I increase my spend. If I'm spending 7 dirhams, I make sure I increase it to 10 and put that 3 in the savings account. So they're actually educating each other in a very sort of social way, and creating sort of banking with friends, which sounds weird. But creating that sort of social environment is
it might sound weird for a certain part of the generation where, you know, speaking about money wasn't a thing, and certain cultures as well. But that's really good to see. And so as we move towards that generation with that, as you mentioned before, Lito, as you afraid that, and hopefully, right, it's not afraid. It's actually probably a hopeful thing that a lot of those laggards will stop existing, and those situations of unbanked will cease, and you might not have a buyer direct in a few years. Is that?
Well, we understand this, and honestly, I'm here right now just to remind everyone that while the world is moving forward digitally and all the technology is coming up, there will always be these people left behind, and somebody has to take care of them, and that's what we're there for. But yes, eventually, even our hope is that they will transition. Now, we're already looking at that. So eventually, we'll also turn into mobile apps and make it more seamless, and hopefully educate them as well to get started. That's a slow process, but the more we interact with our customers, the more we realize just how far behind they really are. Like, for instance, when we're doing over-the-counter transactions for them to pay the electricity bill, as an example, the receipt would come in via SMS. And they didn't want to accept this. They wanted an actual printed receipt. So we had to redo our machines, and we had to look at the way to actually be able to print the machine, which we didn't think about before that. And so we had to reset the whole thing and say, okay, here's an actual printed receipt for you, which they would then funnily take a photo of somehow and send it to their family back home to just prove that they paid for it. And I was thinking, technically, we could have done that through MMS or SMS or WhatsApp or whatever it was. But to them, it was just really having to hold something. So that's how backward they are. And we're just here to say, okay, we'll help you through that journey. We have payment centers all across, and we continue to set up payment centers across. But as they're transitioning, we will too. So that's for sure. Now, is that a 5-year, 3-year, 10-year thing? We don't know, and we're going along the way, and we're monitoring the data very closely.
And how cool to have a panel that has such a positive social impact. You know, it's not that typical for a tech panel to be making our lives better. You know, in such a social way.
So if I'm conscious of the time, and much as we could really overrun for fun, let me just try and bring this to a close with a couple of final thoughts from you all. Look, I remember when e-commerce killed the bookstore, right? And that was my first encounter with e-commerce, and it was a very sort of transactional, single activity, isolated from anything else in life. If you wanted a book, you could go online. I've heard a whole set of adjectives, illustrations, use cases today that made me think about the future of transactions as being layered and aggregated and overlay and so forth. But I've heard lots of positives. I've heard social, I've heard healthy, I've heard inclusive. What are your, just building on that final point, Brad, which was, just in time, perfect. Going through the panel, one word summarizing this kind of sense of, the transaction, the involvement with e-commerce. Javed, let's start with you. What's the big positive soundbite from Javed to close?
I think the future is and will always remain unknown, and I think we need to be comfortable with that, and that will allow us to go into tomorrow looking forward to a very exciting and beautiful tomorrow.
Rahul?
Well, it's exciting because of the way things are being developed, the pace at which technology is progressing. If you're able to keep up with it, it's definitely going to be exciting. I mean, recently we've all heard, those who are living here, hope no one's not missed out on this, but soon we'll be able to pay with our face using public transport. I mean, something like that, if it does come to online e-commerce, it'll be a game changer with the way technology is advancing. So yeah, excited, basically.
One word, focus. So I think the tech companies and the fintech companies, why they're so good at what they do is they take a small part of the value chain or a small segment and do it very, very well. And I think that's where I see the world going.
For me, the one word is inclusive. I mean, no technology, no matter how progressive or how great it is, will never be ubiquitous. And so at the end of the day, you have to take care of that segment who will be left behind, and that's the focus as well, just to make sure that you take those laggards and take them along with you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you for the insights and your time.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.